Prologue. The aroma of caramelized onions and fresh thyme drifted through Isabella Martinez's small restaurant as she stirred the risotto with practiced precision. Her grandmother's wooden spoon felt warm in her calloused hands, the same hands that had worked 16-hour days for the past 3 years trying to keep Nonna's kitchen alive. "Mija, cooking is love made visible," her grandmother had always said. Tonight, love wasn't enough to pay the rent. Isabella glanced at the stack of unpaid bills beside the register, each red notice a reminder that dreams don't pay for themselves. The bank's final eviction letter sat on top, its harsh words burning in her memory. 30 days to vacate the premises. The bell above the door chimed and Isabella looked up from her stirring. Rain dripped from the expensive suit of the man who stepped inside, his dark hair disheveled from the storm. Everything about him screamed money, from his Italian leather shoes to the watch that probably cost more than her annual rent. "We're actually closed," she said softly, though her heart hammered at the sight of him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with steel-gray eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "Please." His deep voice carried an edge of desperation that surprised her. "I just need somewhere warm for a few minutes." Isabella hesitated, then nodded toward an empty table. "I suppose I could make you something to eat." She didn't know that this stranger was Nathaniel Cross, heir to a fashion empire worth billions. She didn't know that 3 blocks away, his father was finalizing arrangements for his marriage to a woman he'd never loved. She didn't know that her simple act of kindness would change both their lives forever. What she did know was that when he tasted her food, something shifted in his expression. The cold businessman facade cracked, revealing glimpses of the man underneath. "This is incredible," he said, taking another bite of her signature dish. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "My grandmother taught me that food is more than sustenance," Isabella replied, refilling his wineglass. "It's comfort, memory, home." Nathaniel studied her face in the candlelight, noting the exhaustion in her warm brown eyes, the determined set of her jaw. "What would you do if someone offered you enough money to make all your dreams come true?" Isabella laughed, a sound both bitter and beautiful. "Dreams are expensive, Mr. Cross, Nathaniel Cross." He set down his fork, decision crystallizing in his mind. "And I might have a proposition that could help us both." Outside, thunder rumbled ominously, as if the universe itself sensed that everything was about to change. Neither of them could have imagined that this chance encounter would lead to a contract that would bind their hearts as surely as their signatures on paper. The recipe for disaster was about to become the ingredients for love.
Welcome to another edition of Ever After Romance Audiobook. This is an original creation for entertainment only. Enjoy.
Chapter 1. The Ultimatum. Nathaniel Cross stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his father's corner office, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a kingdom waiting to be claimed. The weight of legacy pressed against his shoulders as Harrison Cross's voice cut through the morning silence like a blade. "The Van Der Berg merger is non-negotiable, Nathaniel." His father's tone brooked no argument, each word precise and final. "Charlotte is perfect for our family's image, beautiful, connected, from impeccable breeding." "Breeding?" Nathaniel turned from the window, his jaw tightening. "We're talking about marriage, not acquiring livestock." Harrison's steel-gray eyes, so similar to his son's, hardened with disapproval. "We're talking about survival. The fashion industry is evolving, and we need their European connections to stay competitive." Nathaniel moved to the leather chair across from his father's mahogany desk, his hands gripping the armrests. "There has to be another way. A business partnership, a joint venture." "Marriage is the partnership." Harrison's fist struck the desk with finality. "Victor Van Der Berg won't negotiate any other terms. His daughter for our empire's future." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Nathaniel's gaze drifted to the family portraits lining the office walls. Generations of crossmen who had sacrificed personal happiness for business success. "And if I refuse?" The question escaped before he could stop it. Harrison's smile was cold as winter steel. Then you forfeit your position as CEO, your inheritance, and your place in this family. The board has already been informed of the arrangement. Nathaniel's breath caught in his throat. You've discussed this without me? Business waits for no one, son. Charlotte expects your proposal within 3 months. Harrison opened a manila folder, dismissing his son with the gesture. The engagement party is already being planned. Fury and desperation warred in Nathaniel's chest as he stood, his movements sharp with suppressed emotion. The door seemed miles away, each step echoing his father's ultimatum. One more thing, Harrison called out as Nathaniel reached for the handle. Charlotte's already chosen the wedding venue. June works best for the quarterly reports. Outside the office, Nathaniel leaned against the marble wall, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. His phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. Darling, I've booked us dinner at Le Bernardin. We have so much to discuss. XOX. The suffocating weight of predetermined fate settled over him like a shroud. Somewhere in the building below, his assistant was probably already fielding calls from wedding planners and society reporters. Nathaniel pulled out his camera, a secret rebellion hidden in his briefcase, and scrolled through photos he'd taken in secret. Sunrise over the Hudson River. Street musicians in Central Park. Real moments captured when no one was watching. These fragments of beauty were all he had left of himself. As he walked toward the elevator, one thought echoed in his mind. There had to be another way. There had to be. Chapter 2. The Hidden Gem. The rain came down in sheets, transforming the city streets into rivers of neon light and shadow. Nathaniel ducked into the first doorway he could find, his Armani suit soaked through despite his expensive umbrella. The modest sign above read, Nonna's Kitchen, in faded gold lettering, and warm light spilled from windows fogged with steam. Through the glass, he glimpsed a small dining room with mismatched chairs and checkered tablecloths that should have looked cheap but somehow felt welcoming instead. "We're actually closed," came a soft voice as he stepped inside, bells chiming overhead. Nathaniel looked up to see the most beautiful woman he'd ever encountered. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, tendrils escaping to frame her heart-shaped face. Flour dusted her apron, and her warm brown eyes held a combination of exhaustion and fierce determination that made his chest tighten unexpectedly. "Please," he heard himself say, desperation leaking into his voice. "I just need somewhere warm for a few minutes." She hesitated, studying his face with an intensity that made him feel exposed. Then she nodded toward a corner table, her movements graceful despite her obvious fatigue. "I suppose I could make you something to eat." As she disappeared into the kitchen, Nathaniel took in his surroundings. Family photos covered one wall. Generations of smiling faces gathered around dinner tables. The scent of garlic and herbs filled the air, along with something else he couldn't identify. Something that felt like home. She returned with a steaming plate, setting it before him with practiced ease. Risotto with wild mushrooms and truffle oil, my grandmother's recipe. The first bite was a revelation. Flavors exploded across his palate, earthy, rich, complex. It was like tasting sunshine and rain and everything good about the world condensed into a single spoonful. "This is incredible," he managed, looking up at her in amazement. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "My grandmother taught me that food is more than sustenance," she replied, refilling his wineglass with a vintage that probably came from the corner store but tasted better than anything in his father's cellar. "It's comfort, memory, home." Nathaniel studied her face in the candlelight, noting the way her eyes lit up when she talked about cooking. "What's your name?" "Isabella Martinez." She wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly shy. "And you're either very lost or very desperate to end up in a place like this." "Both, probably." He took another bite, savoring the way the flavors lingered on his tongue. "What would you do if someone offered you enough money to make all your dreams come true?" Isabella's laugh held both bitterness and beauty. Dreams are expensive, Mr. Cross. Nathaniel Cross. The decision crystallized in his mind with sudden clarity. And I might have a proposition that could help us both. She tilted her head, curiosity replacing wariness. What kind of proposition? Outside, thunder rumbled like an omen, but Nathaniel felt something shift inside his chest. Looking at Isabella's face, seeing the passion in her eyes when she talked about her craft, he glimpsed a possibility he'd never considered. How would you feel about being married to a millionaire? The words hung in the air between them, impossible and perfect and completely insane. Isabella's eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. I'm sorry, what? Nathaniel leaned forward, his heart racing with the first real hope he'd felt in months. I need a wife to escape an arranged marriage. You need money to save your restaurant. It's a business proposition, nothing more. The silence stretched between them, filled with possibility and terror in equal measure. Chapter 3. Moving in. Isabella stood in the marble foyer of Nathaniel's penthouse, her battered suitcase looking painfully out of place against the pristine white walls and gleaming surfaces. Everything screamed money and emptiness, beautiful but cold, like a museum where no one actually lived. The master bedroom is down that hall, Nathaniel said, his voice carefully neutral as he gestured toward the left wing. You'll have your own bathroom, walk-in closet, and private balcony. Where will you sleep? Isabella clutched her grandmother's wooden spoon, the only piece of home she'd brought with her. The guest suite. He avoided her eyes, straightening his already perfect tie. As we discussed, this arrangement is strictly business. Separate quarters, minimal interaction except for public appearances. Isabella nodded, though something twisted uncomfortably in her stomach. The contract they'd signed was clear. 1 year of marriage, $600,000 plus restaurant financing, no emotional complications, simple, professional. So why did the distance in his voice make her feel so hollow? I brought some cooking supplies, she said, lifting a box of pots and pans that had seen better decades. I hope you don't mind if I use the kitchen occasionally. Nathaniel's expression softened almost imperceptibly. This is your home now. Use whatever you need. Home. The word felt strange in a place so devoid of warmth. Isabella followed him through rooms that belonged in architectural magazines, all clean lines and expensive art that probably cost more than most people's houses. The kitchen was a chef's dream, all gleaming granite and professional-grade appliances that had clearly never been used. Isabella ran her fingers over the pristine cooktop, imagining the meals she could create here. I don't cook, Nathaniel said, watching her exploration with unreadable eyes. I usually order in or eat at the office. That's tragic. The words slipped out before she could stop them. A kitchen like this should be full of life. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe even longing. I wouldn't know where to start. Cooking isn't about following rules, Isabella said, opening cabinets to find them completely empty, except for a few takeout menus. It's about feeling your way through flavors, trusting your instincts. I'm better with numbers than instincts. Isabella looked at him, really looked, and saw exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes. When's the last time you had a home-cooked meal? Nathaniel was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. My mother used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings before she died. I was 8. The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Isabella felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crack. I could cook tonight, she offered softly. If you want. You don't have to. I want to. And surprisingly, she meant it. Besides, we should probably practice acting like a married couple. Something shifted in the air between them, subtle but significant. Nathaniel's shoulders relaxed a fraction, and when he looked at her, she saw the man from the restaurant, vulnerable beneath the expensive armor. I'd like that, he said quietly. As Isabella began unpacking her supplies, transforming the sterile kitchen into something that felt alive, she caught Nathaniel watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. This was supposed to be business, nothing more. So why did her heart flutter when he smiled? Chapter 4. Public Debut. The charity gala glittered with Manhattan's elite crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light over designer gowns and tuxedos that cost more than most people's cars. Isabella smoothed the sapphire blue dress Nathaniel had insisted on buying her, its silk fabric feeling foreign against skin more accustomed to chef's whites. "Remember," Nathaniel murmured as they approached the photographers, "we met at your restaurant 6 months ago. Love at first sight. Keep the details vague." His hand settled at the small of her back, warm through the thin fabric, and Isabella fought to ignore the way her pulse jumped at his touch. This was performance, nothing more. "Mr. Cross." A reporter thrust a microphone toward them. "Care to comment on your surprise marriage? Sources say you two had a very private ceremony." "When you know, you know," Nathaniel replied smoothly, his media training evident in every polished word. "Isabella swept me off my feet the moment I tasted her cooking." Isabella managed a smile that felt more natural than expected. "He was my most charming customer. I couldn't resist him." The lie rolled off her tongue easily, but when Nathaniel's thumb traced a small circle against her back, she wondered how much was pretense and how much was becoming terrifyingly real. "Isabella!" A sharp voice cut through the crowd like a blade. Charlotte Van Der Berg glided toward them, resplendent in white silk that made her look like an avenging angel. Her platinum blonde hair was swept into a perfect chignon, and her blue eyes held the kind of cold fury that could freeze hell itself. "Charlotte." Nathaniel's hand tightened protectively on Isabella's waist. "I wasn't sure you'd be here tonight." "Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world." Charlotte's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I simply had to meet the woman who stole my fiancé." "We were never engaged," Nathaniel said quietly. "Weren't we?" Charlotte's laugh was like tinkling ice. "Your father certainly thought so. But then, men are so easily distracted by novelty." The insult hit its mark, but Isabella lifted her chin with quiet dignity. "Nice to meet you too, Charlotte." "How refreshing." Charlotte's gaze raked over Isabella's dress with obvious disdain. "A little nobody from nowhere playing dress-up with the big boys. Tell me, dear, what exactly do you bring to the table besides your cooking skills?" Heat flashed through Isabella's veins, but before she could respond, Nathaniel stepped closer, his presence like a shield between them. "Isabella brings authenticity to everything she touches," he said, his voice carrying an edge of steel. "Something that's apparently in short supply these days." Charlotte's composure cracked for just a moment, revealing the fury beneath her perfect mask. "How romantic. I do hope it lasts." As she glided away, Isabella felt the weight of curious stares from every corner of the ballroom. Whispers followed in Charlotte's wake. Speculation about the sudden marriage. Questions about Isabella's background. Doubts about the authenticity of their relationship. "You didn't have to defend me," Isabella said softly. "Yes, I did." Nathaniel's voice was rough with an emotion she couldn't name. "She had no right to speak to you that way." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the crowded ballroom faded away. Isabella felt something shift between them, not the careful politeness of their contract, but something warmer, more dangerous. "Shall we dance?" Nathaniel offered his hand, his smile genuine for the first time all evening. "I should warn you," Isabella said, placing her hand in his. "I'm much better in the kitchen than on the dance floor." "Then it's a good thing I'm an excellent teacher." As he led her onto the dance floor, Isabella wondered if they were still talking about dancing. Chapter 5. Domestic Bliss. Morning sunlight streamed through the penthouse windows as Isabella stood at the stove, humming softly while she prepared breakfast. The kitchen had transformed over the past 2 weeks, herbs growing on the windowsill, copper pots hanging from hooks, the lingering aroma of last night's dinner still perfuming the air. "Something smells incredible." Nathaniel's voice was rough with sleep as he appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled and shirt partially unbuttoned. Isabella's breath caught at the sight of him, relaxed, unguarded, devastatingly handsome in the golden morning light. French toast with cinnamon and vanilla, my grandmother's weekend special. You don't have to cook for me every day, he said, though he moved closer to peer over her shoulder at the sizzling pan. I like cooking for you. The admission slipped out before she could stop it, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. I mean, it's part of our arrangement, appearing domestic. Right, the arrangement. Something flickered across his features, disappointment maybe, before his carefully controlled mask slipped back into place. They ate in comfortable silence, the morning news playing softly in the background. Isabella found herself stealing glances at Nathaniel as he read his tablet, noting the way his brow furrowed when he concentrated, the absent way he traced the rim of his coffee cup. What are you working on? She asked, genuinely curious. Quarterly projections, market analysis. He set down the tablet with a sigh. Nothing as interesting as what you do. Creating spreadsheets is an art form too, Isabella said with a smile. Just a different kind of creativity. You're being kind. Nathaniel's laugh held no humor. There's nothing creative about maximizing profit margins. Then why do it? The question hung between them, more intimate than it should have been. Nathaniel was quiet for so long that Isabella thought he wouldn't answer. Because it's what's expected, he said finally. What I was born to do. But what do you want to do? Nathaniel looked at her with such raw surprise that Isabella realized no one had ever asked him that question before. The vulnerability in his gray eyes made her chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't name. He started to speak, then stopped, shaking his head. It doesn't matter what I want. Of course it matters. Isabella reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. You matter. The simple touch sent electricity shooting up her arm, and from the way Nathaniel's eyes darkened, she knew he felt it too. For a moment, they sat frozen, hands barely touching, but somehow connected by something far more profound than their fake marriage contract. The spell broke when Nathaniel's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He pulled his hand away, the professional mask sliding back into place as he glanced at the screen. I should take this, he said, standing abruptly. Thank you for breakfast, it was perfect. As he disappeared into his office, Isabella stared at her tingling fingers, wondering when this pretense had started feeling so dangerously real. Later that evening, she was cleaning up after dinner when she noticed a forgotten camera bag tucked behind the couch. Curiosity overcame good sense, and she carefully lifted out an expensive-looking camera, its weight solid and reassuring in her hands. You found it, Nathaniel's voice made her jump. I'm sorry, Isabella said quickly, holding out the camera. I wasn't snooping. It was just sitting there, and It's fine. He took the camera, his fingers careful on its surface. It's just a hobby. May I see? Isabella asked softly. Something vulnerable crossed his features before he nodded, scrolling through the display. The images that appeared took Isabella's breath away. Street scenes captured with an artist's eye, moments of beauty in unexpected places, photographs that revealed a soul she was only beginning to discover. Nathaniel, she breathed, these are incredible. You have real talent. They're just snapshots. They're not. Isabella moved closer, studying a particularly striking image of sunrise over the city. They're poetry. They're the way you see the world. When she looked up, Nathaniel was staring at her with an expression that made her heart race. No one's ever said that before. Then no one's been paying attention. The air between them crackled with tension, and Isabella found herself leaning closer, drawn by something far stronger than gravity. Nathaniel's gaze dropped to her lips, and she saw her own desire reflected in his eyes. Isabella, he whispered, her name a prayer on his lips. This time, when the phone rang, they both ignored it completely. Chapter 6. The Restaurant Dream. The empty restaurant space was nothing but bare walls and dusty floors. but Isabella could see its potential as clearly as if it were already complete. She moved through the hollow rooms with reverent fingers, touching surfaces that would soon hold her dreams. "The kitchen will go here," she explained to Nathaniel, her voice bright with excitement. "With the prep stations arranged for maximum efficiency. And over there." She spun toward the main dining area, arms spread wide. 12 tables, maybe 14 if we're creative with the layout." Nathaniel watched her with undisguised fascination, his camera hanging forgotten around his neck. "You see it all, don't you? Even with nothing here." "I've been dreaming about this place for years." Isabella's cheeks flushed with passion, her eyes sparkling. Every detail, every dish, every moment when a customer takes their first bite and their face lights up with surprise. "Tell me more," Nathaniel said softly, and Isabella's heart skipped at the genuine interest in his voice. She walked him through her vision, the intimate lighting that would make every table feel like a private celebration, the open kitchen where diners could watch the magic happen, the carefully curated wine list featuring small producers who crafted bottles like love letters. "And the menu?" Nathaniel asked, following her to where the kitchen would be. "Seasonal, local. Every dish tells a story." Isabella closed her eyes, lost in the fantasy. "Summer tomatoes so perfect they barely need anything but sea salt and basil. Fall mushrooms that taste like the forest floor. Winter stews that warm you from the inside out." When she opened her eyes, Nathaniel was staring at her with such intensity that her breath caught. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You're beautiful when you talk about cooking," he said quietly. "You light up from the inside." Heat bloomed across Isabella's skin, and she looked away, flustered by the desire in his eyes. "We should measure the space, for the equipment orders." "Of course." But Nathaniel didn't move, didn't break eye contact. "Isabella, the ovens will need special ventilation," she interrupted, desperate to redirect the conversation away from dangerous territory. "And we'll need to check the electrical capacity for all the refrigeration units." Nathaniel nodded, pulling out his phone to make notes, but Isabella caught the way his jaw tightened with suppressed emotion. They were both pretending this was business, but the air between them crackled with something far more complex. They spent the next hour taking measurements and making lists, their movements carefully choreographed to avoid accidental contact. But every brush of fingers when they passed the tape measure, every shared laugh over her ambitious plans, built the tension higher. "You know," Nathaniel said as they prepared to leave, "I used to photograph food." Isabella turned, surprised. "Really? In culinary school? Before business school?" He lifted his camera with a self-deprecating smile. "I was going to be a food photographer, document the artistry in every dish." "What happened?" "My father happened." Nathaniel's expression hardened. Photography wasn't a suitable career for a Cross heir. Too unpredictable, too artistic. Isabella moved closer, drawn by the pain in his voice. "It's not too late. You could still..." "Could what?" "Abandon everything I've worked for?" But even as he said it, Nathaniel's gaze drifted to the empty restaurant space with longing. "You could document this," Isabella said impulsively. "The restaurant's creation, from empty space to opening night, a photo essay about dreams becoming reality." Nathaniel's eyes met hers, and Isabella saw hope war with years of ingrained caution. "You'd want that?" "I'd love that." The truth of it surprised her. "Your art and my food, creating something beautiful together." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning that went far beyond photography and restaurants. Nathaniel stepped closer, close enough that Isabella could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. "Isabella," he said, her name rough with emotion. "Yes?" she whispered. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with reverent gentleness. "This isn't supposed to be real." "I know," she breathed, leaning into his touch despite every logical thought screaming at her to pull away. But it feels real. I know. The kiss was inevitable, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as Isabella's hands fisted in his shirt and pulled him closer. He tasted like coffee and possibility, like everything she'd been afraid to want. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. "This complicates things," he whispered. "Everything worthwhile is complicated," Isabella replied, her heart hammering against her ribs. Outside, the city hummed with life. But inside the empty restaurant that would soon hold their dreams, time seemed suspended in perfect, terrifying possibility. Chapter 7. Breaking the Rules. Isabella woke to the scent of fresh peonies and coffee, sunlight streaming through the silk curtains of what had become their shared bedroom. 3 weeks had passed since their first kiss, 3 weeks of careful touches and stolen moments that made her contract feel like a distant memory. On her nightstand sat a bouquet of pale pink peonies, her favorite flowers, though she'd never told Nathaniel that preference. Somehow, he'd simply known. "Good morning, beautiful." His voice was rough with sleep as he emerged from the bathroom, hair damp from his shower, shirt unbuttoned to reveal the chest she'd explored with reverent hands just hours before. "The flowers are gorgeous," Isabella said softly, touching the delicate petals. "But you didn't have to." "I wanted to." Nathaniel sat on the bed's edge, his fingers tracing her bare shoulder with feather-light touches that made her shiver. "Besides, we need to maintain appearances." The excuse was wearing thin, and they both knew it. The flowers weren't for appearances. They were because he'd noticed her admiring peonies at the farmer's market. The gentle touches weren't for show. They were because he couldn't seem to keep his hands off her. "What's our story today?" Isabella asked, though she was much more interested in the way his thumb circled her collarbone. "Lunch with the board members' wives. They want to get to know the woman who tamed the untamable Nathaniel Cross." His smile was self-deprecating. Their words, not mine. "And what should I tell them about how I accomplished this miraculous feat?" Nathaniel's eyes darkened with desire and something deeper, more dangerous. "Tell them you saw through all my walls." The honesty in his voice made Isabella's chest tighten. "Nathaniel, tell them you made me remember what it feels like to be human." His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Tell them you taught me that some rules are meant to be broken." Before Isabella could respond, he kissed her with a passion that stole her breath and shattered her carefully constructed defenses. This wasn't the hesitant exploration of their early days together. This was need and want and feelings too big to contain. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Isabella saw her own emotions reflected in his eyes. Love. Terrifying, impossible, completely real love. "This isn't fake anymore," she whispered. "No." Nathaniel's voice was raw with honesty. "It hasn't been fake for weeks." They spent the morning in bed, talking and touching and pretending the outside world didn't exist. Isabella told him about her grandmother's stories of the old country, about learning to cook by standing on a milk crate to reach the stove. Nathaniel shared memories of his mother, of the loneliness that had followed her death, of dreams buried under years of expectations. "I used to want to travel," he admitted, his fingers combing through her hair. "Take photographs of street food in Bangkok, document the spice markets in Morocco." "You still could," Isabella said, pressing a kiss to his chest. "After this year is over, after the contract ends, you could go anywhere you want." Something shifted in his expression, a shadow of pain that made Isabella's stomach clench. "Isabella?" "We don't have to talk about it now," she said quickly, not wanting to break the spell of their perfect morning. "We have time." But even as she said it, Isabella felt the weight of their temporary arrangement pressing down like a storm cloud. 1 year. They had agreed to 1 year. And then what? Would he return to his cold, controlled life? Would she disappear back into obscurity with her restaurant and her memories? The thought was too painful to examine closely. "I should start getting ready," Isabella said, slipping from his arms despite every instinct telling her to stay. "Isabella?" Nathaniel caught her hand, his grip gentle but desperate. "Whatever happens, I need you to know. This matters. You matter." The words were a promise and a goodbye wrapped together, beautiful and heartbreaking in equal measure. As Isabella prepared for another performance as the perfect wife, she wondered how much longer they could pretend their feelings had an expiration date. Chapter 8. The Photography Exhibition. The small gallery buzzed with quiet conversation as guests sipped wine and studied the photographs lining the pristine white walls. Isabella watched from the corner, her heart hammering with nervous excitement as Nathaniel moved through the crowd, his expression stunned and vulnerable. She'd arranged everything in secret, contacted the gallery owner, selected 20 of his most powerful images, written the artist's statement that now hung beside the entrance. It had taken weeks of careful planning and calling in favors, but seeing the wonder on his face made every sleepless night worth it. "These are extraordinary," a woman in an elegant black dress was saying to Nathaniel. "The way you capture emotion in everyday moments, it's breathtaking." "Thank you," Nathaniel replied, his voice rough with surprise. "I never imagined anyone would want to see them." Isabella's chest tightened with fierce pride and protective love. How could he not know how talented he was? How could years of criticism have convinced him his art didn't matter? Nathaniel Cross, the photographer, another guest mused. "I had no idea the fashion empire heir was also an artist." "There are many things about my husband that might surprise you," Isabella said, appearing at Nathaniel's side with 2 glasses of champagne. The possessive pride in her voice wasn't an act, and from the way Nathaniel's eyes heated when she called him her husband, he felt it too. "Mrs. Cross," the gallery owner approached with obvious delight. "Your husband's work is remarkable. We've already had several serious inquiries about purchasing pieces." "People want to buy them?" Nathaniel looked genuinely shocked. "Of course they do," Isabella said softly. "Art speaks to the soul, and your photographs, they show people how beautiful the world can be if they just know how to look." Their eyes met across the crowded gallery, and Isabella felt the familiar electricity arc between them. But this time, it was accompanied by something deeper. Understanding, recognition, love so profound it took her breath away. "How did you know?" Nathaniel asked quietly as they moved to study his photograph of sunrise over the city, taken from their penthouse balcony. "How did you know this mattered to me?" "Because I see you," Isabella replied simply. "The real you, not the image you show the world." Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, studying his own work with new eyes. "No one's ever believed in me like this. Then no one's been paying attention." The evening passed in a blur of congratulations and conversations about art and beauty and the courage it takes to create something meaningful. Isabella watched Nathaniel bloom under the genuine appreciation, watched him remember who he was beneath all the expectations and obligations. As the crowd began to thin, they found themselves alone in front of his photograph of Isabella cooking, caught in a moment of pure concentration, flower in her hair and joy on her face. "You photographed me," she realized, studying the image with wonder. "I couldn't help myself." Nathaniel's voice was soft with emotion. "You were so beautiful, so passionate about what you were doing. I wanted to capture that moment forever." Isabella turned to face him, her heart full to bursting with love and gratitude and fear. "Nathaniel, I love you." The words fell between them like a declaration of war. "I know I shouldn't. I know it complicates everything, but I can't pretend anymore. I love you, Isabella." The gallery seemed to disappear around them, the world narrowing to just this moment, this truth that changed everything. "I love you too," she whispered, the admission both liberation and terror. When he kissed her, surrounded by images that captured beauty in unexpected places, Isabella understood that some art is created not on canvas or through camera lenses, but in the space between two hearts learning to beat as one. "What happens now?" she asked against his lips, her voice trembling with hope and fear. "Now we figure out how to make this real," Nathaniel replied, his forehead resting against hers. "All of it. The love, the life, the future we both want." As they stood surrounded by his art, proof that he was more than just a business heir, that he had a soul worth knowing, Isabella felt something shift in the universe. The contract that had brought them together was just paper, but what they'd built was unbreakable. Or so she thought. Across the gallery, hidden behind a pillar, Charlotte Van Der Berg lowered her phone after capturing several photos of their intimate embrace. Her smile was cold as winter steel as she scrolled through the images, already crafting the story that would destroy them both. The game was about to change, and Isabella had no idea what was coming. Chapter 9. Media Destruction. Isabella woke to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. Nathaniel's arm tightened around her waist as she reached for it, his face peaceful in sleep, unaware that their world was about to shatter. The first notification made her blood run cold. Gold digger exposed, the truth about Nathaniel Cross's fake marriage. With trembling fingers, Isabella scrolled through message after message, each headline more devastating than the last. Photos filled her screen, doctored images that made her look calculating and mercenary, fake documents suggesting she'd researched Nathaniel's wealth before their chance meeting. "Exclusive restaurant owner's elaborate scheme to trap billionaire heir," read one article. Sources close to the Cross family revealed that Isabella Martinez orchestrated their entire relationship, targeting the vulnerable heir during a vulnerable moment. "No, no, no," Isabella whispered, her hands shaking as she read fabricated quotes attributed to unnamed friends who claimed she'd bragged about landing a rich husband. "What's wrong?" Nathaniel's voice was thick with sleep as he pulled her closer. Isabella turned the phone screen toward him, watching as his face went from confused to horrified to furious in the span of seconds. "This is impossible," he said, sitting up abruptly. "These documents, I know you never researched me. This is all fabricated. Tell that to the internet." Isabella's voice cracked as she showed him the social media storm already brewing. Her restaurant's review pages were flooded with one-star ratings and vicious comments calling her a gold-digging whore. Her personal accounts were being bombarded with hate messages from strangers who'd never met her but were convinced she was evil incarnate. Nathaniel's phone began ringing. His assistant, his father, reporters, business associates. The story was spreading like wildfire through Manhattan's elite circles, each retelling more salacious than the last. "We'll fix this," Nathaniel said firmly, though Isabella could see the panic in his eyes. "I'll call my publicist, hold a press conference, tell everyone the truth." "What truth?" Isabella laughed bitterly. "That you hired me to be your fake wife? That our marriage is a business arrangement? That won't exactly help either of our reputations." The magnitude of their situation was becoming clear. They couldn't defend their relationship without admitting it started as a lie, but they couldn't let the media paint Isabella as a scheming gold digger either. Isabella's phone rang. Her restaurant manager, voice tight with panic. "Isabella, you need to see the news," Maria said without preamble. "There are protesters outside the restaurant, people calling for boycotts. The lunch reservations have all canceled." Through the phone, Isabella could hear angry voices chanting outside her dream restaurant, the place that was supposed to be her salvation. "I'll be right there," Isabella said, though her legs felt like jelly. "You're not going anywhere alone," Nathaniel said firmly. "We face this together." But as they dressed in tense silence, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that together was exactly what had gotten them into this mess. Their love had been beautiful in private, but in the harsh light of public scrutiny, it looked like exactly what Charlotte's manufactured evidence claimed it was, a transaction dressed up as romance. The drive to the restaurant was a nightmare of paparazzi and protesters. Isabella pulled her hood up, but cameras still flashed through the car windows, capturing her face for tomorrow's follow-up stories. When they finally reached Nonna's kitchen, Isabella's heart broke completely. Her beautiful restaurant, the one Nathaniel had helped her design, the one that was supposed to open in just 2 weeks, was surrounded by angry people holding signs calling her a fraud and a whore. "Turn around," she told the driver, her voice hollow. I can't see this." As they drove away from her destroyed dreams, Isabella felt something fundamental break inside her chest. The love that had felt so real, so powerful, had been twisted into something ugly by the very world Nathaniel belonged to. And the worst part was, she couldn't tell anymore where the performance ended and the truth began. Chapter 10. The confrontation. The penthouse felt like a tomb when they returned. All the warmth and intimacy they'd built over months evaporated in the harsh fluorescent light of scandal. Isabella stood by the windows, staring out at the city that had once felt full of possibility and now seemed like enemy territory. "My father's called an emergency board meeting," Nathaniel said, ending his latest phone call with visible frustration. "The scandal is affecting stock prices. Investors are nervous about the family's judgment." "Of course they are." Isabella's voice was flat, emotionless. "The Cross heir married to a scheming gold digger reflects poorly on the brand." "Don't say that." Nathaniel moved toward her, but Isabella stepped away, wrapping her arms around herself like armor. "Why not? It's what everyone believes." She turned to face him, her brown eyes blazing with pain and fury. "Your world has decided I'm a calculating bitch who seduced you for money, and there's nothing we can do to change that narrative without admitting our marriage is fake." "So we tell the truth," Nathaniel said desperately. "We explain how we really met, why we made the arrangement, and destroy both our reputations completely?" Isabella laughed bitterly. "At least now you look like a victim instead of a liar." The silence stretched between them, heavy with all the words they couldn't say. Outside, photographers with telephoto lenses were probably documenting their every move, turning their private pain into public entertainment. "There's something else," Nathaniel said quietly. "Charlotte called. She's offering a solution." Isabella's blood went cold. "What kind of solution?" "If I agree to marry her as originally planned, she'll use her influence to kill the story. Claim it was all a misunderstanding, that you were never trying to trap me." Nathaniel's jaw tightened with self-loathing. "She'll even provide financial compensation for the damage to your restaurant." How generous of her. Isabella's voice dripped with acid. "And what does she want in return?" "My signature on a marriage license, a wedding announcement in the Times, the merger my father always wanted." Isabella felt something shatter inside her chest, not her heart, which was already broken, but something deeper, her hope, her faith that love could conquer anything. "You should do it," she said quietly. "What?" Nathaniel looked stricken. "You should marry Charlotte." Isabella moved to their bedroom. No, his bedroom. She'd never had any right to it and began pulling clothes from the closet. "It's the logical choice, the business-smart choice." "Isabella, stop." Nathaniel caught her wrist, his grip gentle but desperate. "I don't want Charlotte. I want you." "Want?" Isabella pulled free, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "That's the problem, isn't it? This was always about want, never about what's practical or smart or realistic." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I was an idiot to think a fake marriage could become real love." The lie burned her throat, but Isabella forced it out anyway. "I got caught up in the fantasy, the money, the lifestyle, but this scandal, it's reminded me what I really am. A nobody from nowhere who thought she could play in your league." "That's not true." Nathaniel's voice was raw with pain. "You know that's not true." "Is it?" Isabella turned to face him, letting him see the anguish in her eyes. "Because right now, with my restaurant destroyed and my reputation in ruins, it feels pretty accurate." She finished packing in silence, each folded garment another step away from the life they'd built together. Nathaniel watched helplessly, his face pale and stricken. "Where will you go?" he asked quietly. "Back to my old apartment. Back to reality." Isabella zipped her suitcase with finality. "Don't worry about the contract. I won't take the money. I don't want anyone to say I profited from this disaster. The money isn't important. Everything in your world is about money, Nathaniel, including me." Another lie, but necessary armor against the pain threatening to destroy her. I was just too stupid to remember that. At the door, Isabella paused, her hand on the handle. "For what it's worth, I did love you. Or at least I loved who I thought you were." "Isabella, please." But she was already gone, the door closing behind her like the final period on a beautiful sentence that had turned into a tragedy. Alone in the silent penthouse, surrounded by the remnants of their life together, Nathaniel sank into the chair where Isabella used to read while he worked. Her scent still lingered on the cushions, vanilla and cinnamon and everything warm and good in the world. His phone buzzed with another call from Charlotte, but he let it go to voicemail. Outside, the city glittered with indifferent beauty, and somewhere in its depths, the woman he loved was trying to rebuild a life he'd helped destroy. The contract that had brought them together was void, but the damage they'd done to each other would last forever. Chapter 11. Rock Bottom. 3 days later, Isabella stood in the empty shell of her dream restaurant, surrounded by the ghosts of what might have been. The protesters were gone, but their damage remained. Broken windows, graffiti on the walls, the lingering stench of rotting vegetables thrown in anger. Her phone had been disconnected to stop the death threats. Her social media accounts were deleted. The world had moved on to fresher scandals, leaving her to pick up the pieces alone. "Mija." Maria appeared in the doorway, her weathered face etched with concern. "You shouldn't be here by yourself." "Where else would I go?" Isabella's voice was hollow as she surveyed the destruction. "This was supposed to be my fresh start, my chance to honor Nona's memory. Your grandmother would be proud of you no matter what," Maria said firmly. "This mess, it's not who you are." Isabella wanted to believe that, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Every article, every social media post, every vicious comment had painted the same picture. Isabella Martinez, gold-digging schemer who'd tried to trap a billionaire and failed. "I keep thinking about what I could have done differently," Isabella admitted, running her fingers along the scarred prep counter. "If I'd said no to his proposal, if I'd been smarter about protecting myself." "If you'd been someone else entirely," Maria interrupted. "But then you wouldn't be the woman who makes people feel loved through her cooking. You wouldn't be the woman who saw past a rich man's walls to the lonely soul underneath." The kindness in Maria's voice broke something loose in Isabella's chest, and tears she'd been holding back for days finally spilled over. "I loved him," she whispered. "God help me, I really loved him." "I know, Mija. And he loved you too. Anyone with eyes could see it." Love wasn't enough. Isabella wiped her cheeks with shaking hands. It never is in the real world. Meanwhile, across the city, Nathaniel sat in his father's office, staring at the marriage contract that would solve all his problems. Charlotte perched on the edge of the desk like a beautiful vulture, her smile as sharp as her perfectly manicured nails. "It's really very simple," she was saying, her voice honey-sweet with victory. "A small wedding, a few carefully orchestrated public appearances, and everyone forgets about your little mistake." "Her name is Isabella," Nathaniel said quietly. "Was," Charlotte corrected. "She's nobody now. A footnote in your biography, easily deleted." Harrison Cross nodded approvingly from behind his mahogany fortress. "Charlotte's being more than generous, considering the embarrassment your wife caused our family." "Fake wife," Charlotte added with delicate emphasis. "Let's not forget this was all an elaborate performance. Rather pathetic, really, that a woman of her background thought she could sustain such a deception." Nathaniel's hands clenched into fists, but he forced his voice to remain level. Isabella never deceived anyone. The arrangement was my idea. How gallant, Charlotte purred, still protecting her honor even now. But we both know the truth. She saw an opportunity and took it. Can you really blame her? I might have done the same thing in her position. The casual cruelty in Charlotte's voice made Nathaniel's stomach turn. This was the woman his father wanted him to marry, the woman who would bear the Cross name and raise the next generation. The thought filled him with existential dread. The board meeting is at 4, Harrison said, consulting his Rolex. They'll want assurance that this scandal won't repeat itself. It won't, Charlotte said confidently. I have no interest in cooking or other domestic hobbies. I understand my role perfectly. Nathaniel looked at the woman who would be his wife. Beautiful, connected, completely without warmth or authenticity. Everything his father had ever said he needed, everything that would leave him cold and empty for the rest of his life. What if I said no? The words slipped out before he could stop them. Father and daughter exchanged glances loaded with shared understanding. Then you'd lose everything, Harrison said simply. Your position, your inheritance, your place in this family. You'd be starting over with nothing, no connections, no safety net. And Isabella? Nathaniel asked, though he dreaded the answer. Charlotte's smile was arctic. Would remain exactly where she is now. Ruined, unemployable in any decent establishment, a cautionary tale about reaching above one's station. The threat was clear: marry Charlotte or watch Isabella's destruction continue. Nathaniel closed his eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices crushing down on him. In his desk drawer, hidden beneath quarterly reports and board meeting notes, lay a small velvet box. Inside was the ring he'd bought for Isabella, not because their contract required it, but because he'd wanted to give her something beautiful, something real. He'd never had the chance to give it to her. Now he never would. Chapter 12. The grand gesture. The engagement party was everything Harrison Cross could have wished for. Manhattan's elite gathered in the ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. Crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light over designer gowns and perfectly orchestrated smiles. Charlotte held court in ivory silk, her left hand prominently displaying the Cross family engagement ring. Nathaniel stood beside her, looking every inch the successful heir in his custom tuxedo. To outside observers, he was the picture of masculine satisfaction, handsome, wealthy, engaged to an appropriate bride. Inside, he was dying by degrees. "Smile, darling," Charlotte murmured through her own practiced beam. "The photographer from Town Country is watching." Nathaniel obliged, though the expression felt like rigor mortis setting in. Around them, guests offered congratulations that sounded hollow in his ears. Everyone was so pleased that he'd come to his senses about that unfortunate business with the chef. "Nathaniel," Senator Whitmore approached with his wife in tow. "Congratulations on your engagement, though I must say we were all rather surprised by your previous entanglement." "Temporary insanity," Charlotte answered smoothly. Thank goodness Nathaniel realized his mistake before it was too late. Each word was a knife between Nathaniel's ribs, but he maintained his composure. This was his life now, performing happiness while his soul withered away. "If you'll excuse me," he said quietly, "I need some air." The hotel's terrace offered a respite from the suffocating atmosphere inside. Nathaniel loosened his bow tie, staring out at the city lights that had once seemed full of possibility. Somewhere out there, Isabella was trying to rebuild her life from the ashes of their love affair. He pulled out his phone, scrolling to her contact information. His thumb hovered over the call button, longing and duty warring in his chest. What would he say? That he was sorry? That he loved her? That he was about to marry another woman to protect them both? The phone rang in his hand. Not Isabella, but his private investigator. "Mr. Cross, I have the information you requested about the media leak." Nathaniel's grip tightened on the device. "Tell me." The fabricated documents originated from Charlotte Van Der Berg's personal publicist. I have emails, payment records, the works. She orchestrated the entire scandal. Ice flooded Nathaniel's veins. You're certain? Absolutely. She even hired the fake sources who gave those damaging quotes. It was a comprehensive character assassination designed to force exactly the outcome that's happening tonight. The phone slipped from Nathaniel's numb fingers, clattering onto the terrace floor. Charlotte had destroyed Isabella's life deliberately, methodically, all to force him into marriage. The woman he was about to pledge his life to was a monster. Nathaniel? Charlotte's voice carried from the ballroom doorway. What are you doing out here? People are asking for you. He turned slowly, seeing her clearly for the first time. Beautiful, yes. Polished and appropriate and everything his father could want in a daughter-in-law. But utterly, completely evil. I know what you did, he said quietly. Charlotte's composure didn't flicker. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. The leak, the fabricated evidence, the systematic destruction of Isabella's reputation. Nathaniel's voice was deadly calm. I have proof. Now Charlotte's mask slipped, revealing the calculating predator beneath. Proof of what? That I protected you from making the biggest mistake of your life? You destroyed an innocent woman to get what you wanted. I eliminated a threat to our family's interests. Charlotte's eyes glittered with cold satisfaction. She was never going to be suitable for your position. I simply expedited the inevitable. You're insane. I'm practical. Charlotte stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. And unless you want that practical nature turned against Isabella again, you'll smile and go through with this engagement, because I can make her life much, much worse if I choose to. The threat hung between them like poison gas. Nathaniel stared at the woman who held Isabella's future hostage, understanding with crystalline clarity that he had a choice to make. He could marry Charlotte, protect Isabella from further harm, and spend the rest of his life hating himself. Or he could fight. You know what, Charlotte? Nathaniel's smile was sharp as a blade. I think it's time everyone learned what kind of woman you really are. Before she could respond, he strode back into the ballroom, moving with purpose toward the small stage where the band had been playing. The microphone felt solid in his hands as he tapped it for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice carried clearly over the crowd. If I could have your attention for a moment. The ballroom fell silent, hundreds of faces turning toward him expectantly. He could see his father's confused expression, Charlotte's dawning horror, the society reporters reaching for their phones. I need to make an announcement, Nathaniel continued, his heart hammering with terror and exhilaration. This engagement is over. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a stone thrown into still water. Furthermore, Nathaniel's voice grew stronger. I need to tell you all about the woman I really love. Her name is Isabella Martinez, and she's the most extraordinary person I've ever known. Charlotte lunged toward the stage, but Nathaniel's security detail, loyal to him, not his father, blocked her path. Isabella is brilliant, passionate, and kind, Nathaniel continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom. She makes art out of food and magic out of ordinary moments. She deserves so much better than the lies that have been told about her. His father was pushing through the crowd now, his face purple with rage. The truth is, Nathaniel said, his eyes finding the nearest camera, I hired Isabella to be my fake wife to escape an arranged marriage. But somewhere along the way, the fake became real. I fell in love with her honesty, her strength, her incredible capacity for love. The crowd erupted in shocked chatter, but Nathaniel wasn't finished. And I choose her, he declared, his voice ringing with absolute certainty. I choose love over duty, truth over convenience, authenticity over appearances. I choose Isabella, and I always will. As security guards reached the stage and his father's shouts filled the air, Nathaniel felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. He had one more stop to make. Chapter 13. The Reunion. Isabella knelt on the restaurant's floor, scrubbing graffiti from the walls with methodical determination. The physical work kept her hands busy and her mind occupied, though nothing could silence the ache in her chest that grew stronger with each passing day. The door chime made her look up, expecting Maria or perhaps another reporter seeking a follow-up story. Instead, she found Nathaniel standing in the doorway, his usually perfect appearance disheveled and his gray eyes blazing with desperate hope. Isabella. Her name fell from his lips like a prayer. She scrambled to her feet, suddenly conscious of her torn jeans and the cleaning chemicals staining her hands. "What are you doing here?" "I need to show you something." Nathaniel held out his phone, the screen displaying a news article with a shocking headline. Cross Ear exposes fake engagement scandal at own party. Isabella's hands shook as she took the device, scrolling through the article that detailed Nathaniel's public confession about their arrangement and his even more public declaration of love. "You told them everything," she whispered. "I told them the truth." Nathaniel stepped closer, his presence filling the small space with electricity. "About the contract, about Charlotte's manipulation, about how I fell in love with you despite every plan to keep my heart locked away." Isabella's chest tightened with hope and terror in equal measure. "Your father must be furious. He disowned me publicly 20 minutes after I left the stage." Nathaniel's smile was rueful but free. "Cut off my trust fund, my corporate credit cards, my access to the company. I'm officially persona non grata in Manhattan high society." "Oh, Nathaniel." Isabella reached toward him instinctively, then caught herself. "I'm so sorry. You've lost everything because of me." "No." He caught her hands in his touch warm and sure. "I've lost everything that didn't matter and found the only thing that does." Before Isabella could respond, he was pulling something from his jacket pocket, a small velvet box that made her breath catch in her throat. "I bought this weeks ago," he said, opening it to reveal a stunning but understated solitaire that caught the afternoon light like captured stars. "Not because our contract required it, but because I wanted to give you something as beautiful as you are." "Nathaniel, let me finish." His voice was rough with emotion. "I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you by letting you think I chose duty over love. But Isabella, you are my choice. You've always been my choice." Isabella stared at the ring, then at his face, seeing vulnerability and love and desperate hope written in every line. "What about your life, your career, everything you worked for?" "I'm starting a photography studio," Nathaniel said, his eyes bright with possibility. "Specializing in culinary photography. I have some savings put aside that my father can't touch, and a client who's very interested in documenting the creation of a new restaurant." Despite everything, Isabella felt her lips curve into a smile. A client? Beautiful chef, incredible talent, deserves to have her story told properly. Nathaniel's thumb traced across her knuckles. "If she'll have me." The hope in his voice broke down Isabella's last defenses. "The media will have a field day. Disgraced heir marries gold-digging chef." "Let them talk." Nathaniel's voice was fierce with conviction. "I know who you are. You know who you are. Everyone else can go to hell." Isabella looked around the damaged restaurant, seeing not destruction, but possibility. With Nathaniel's photography documenting the rebuild, with their love story finally told truthfully, they could create something beautiful from the ashes. "Ask me," she whispered. Nathaniel's face lit up with joy as he dropped to one knee right there among the paint cans and cleaning supplies. "Isabella Martinez, will you marry me? Really marry me this time, not for contracts or convenience, but because I love you more than life itself?" "Yes." The word came out as a sob of happiness. "Yes, yes, always yes." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, as if it had always belonged there. When Nathaniel stood and kissed her, Isabella tasted salt from tears she didn't realize she was crying. "I love you," she whispered against his lips, Even when I was angry, even when I was hurt, I never stopped loving you. Forever and always, Nathaniel promised, pulling her closer. Forever and always, Isabella agreed. Outside, the city hummed with afternoon traffic, but inside the ruined restaurant that would rise again, two hearts beat in perfect synchrony, no longer bound by contracts or convenience, but by something far more powerful. Love had won. Chapter 14, New Beginnings. 6 months later, the grand opening of Nonna's kitchen was everything Isabella had dreamed and more. Soft jazz played over the gentle murmur of conversation, candlelight danced off copper pots and warm wood surfaces, and the aroma of her signature dishes filled the air with pure magic. Isabella moved through her domain like a conductor leading an orchestra, her staff responding to subtle gestures and shared glances born of weeks of preparation. Every table was full, every dish a small masterpiece, every moment a testament to second chances and the power of authentic love. "Behind you, chef," called Marcus, her new sous chef, sliding past with a tray of her famous risotto. "Table 6 needs more wine," added Sarah, the sommelier Nathaniel had helped her find. "They're asking about the photographer, too." Isabella smiled, glancing toward the corner where Nathaniel crouched with his camera, capturing the controlled chaos of service with an artist's eye. His photography exhibition documenting the restaurant's rebirth had sold out on opening night, establishing him as one of the city's most sought-after culinary photographers. "How are we doing, love?" Nathaniel appeared at her side during a brief lull, his hand settling at the small of her back with familiar warmth. "Perfect," Isabella breathed, leaning into his touch. "Absolutely perfect." And it was. The restaurant buzzed with energy and joy. Critics were already calling it the most authentic dining experience in Manhattan, and reservations were booked solid for the next 3 months. More importantly, Isabella felt complete. Not because of the success, but because she was living her truth. Cooking with passion, surrounded by people who valued authenticity over appearances. "There's someone here to see you," Nathaniel said softly. Isabella looked up to see Harrison Cross standing at the host station, looking uncomfortable but determined. Her father-in-law had maintained radio silence since Nathaniel's public confession, and his presence now sent ripples of tension through the dining room. "I'll handle this," Nathaniel said, his protective instincts immediately activated. "No." Isabella touched his arm gently. "Let me." She approached Harrison with quiet dignity, very aware that several diners were watching the interaction with curiosity. The older man looked older somehow, his imperious bearing tempered by something that might have been regret. "Mr. Cross," Isabella said politely. "Welcome to Nonna's kitchen." "Isabella." Harrison's voice was stiff, but not unkind. "I wondered if we might speak privately." Isabella led him to a quiet corner, gesturing for him to sit at a small table away from the main dining area. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his expensive suit hung loose on his frame. "The restaurant is impressive," Harrison said, his gaze taking in the warm atmosphere and obvious success. "Not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Failure." The admission was honest and brutal. "I thought without Nathaniel's money and connections you'd never recover from the scandal." Isabella kept her expression neutral, though his words stung. "I had something better than money. I had people who believed in me." "Yes?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment, watching Nathaniel photograph a beautifully plated dessert. "My son seems different, happier than I've seen him since his mother died." "Love changes people," Isabella said simply. "So does losing a father's approval." Harrison's voice cracked slightly. "I've been a fool, Isabella. I thought I was protecting Nathaniel's future, but I was destroying his soul." The unexpected vulnerability in his voice made Isabella's chest tighten with sympathy. "It's not too late to change that, isn't it?" Harrison looked at her with haunted eyes. "I disowned him publicly, cut him off financially, told him he was dead to me if he chose you over duty. And yet you're here." Because I've spent 6 months watching my son thrive without me, and I finally understand what I lost. Harrison's hand shook as he reached for his water glass. He's successful, respected, in love with a woman who clearly adores him. Everything I claimed to want for him, achieved by rejecting everything I taught him. Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. He misses you. He won't admit it, but I can see it. Does he? You're his father. Of course he does. Harrison was quiet for so long that Isabella thought the conversation was over. Then quietly, what would I need to do? To earn forgiveness? That's not my place to say, Isabella replied gently. But I know Nathaniel. He has a big heart and a forgiving nature when people he loves are willing to meet him halfway. I don't deserve his forgiveness. None of us deserve the love we're given, Isabella said, thinking of her own journey from desperation to happiness. That's what makes it so precious. Across the restaurant, Nathaniel looked up from his camera and caught sight of his father. For a moment, father and son stared at each other across the crowded dining room, years of hurt and misunderstanding hanging between them like a wall. Then Harrison stood slowly, walking toward his son with careful steps. Isabella held her breath as the two men faced each other, Nathaniel's expression guarded but not hostile, Harrison's face etched with regret and hope. Son, Harrison said quietly, I was wrong. About everything. Dad. Nathaniel's voice was rough with emotion. When Harrison opened his arms, Nathaniel stepped into them without hesitation, and Isabella felt her heart soar with joy. Some bridges could be rebuilt, some relationships could be healed. Love, it turned out, was the most powerful force in any universe. As the evening wound down and the last satisfied customers filtered out into the night, Isabella found herself standing in her kitchen, surrounded by the controlled chaos of cleanup but feeling perfectly at peace. Nathaniel appeared behind her, his arms circling her waist as she leaned back against his chest. Good first night? He asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. The best, Isabella replied, covering his hands with hers. Though I think we might have a new regular customer. Dad seemed impressed, Nathaniel agreed. He asked if we're free for Sunday dinner next week. Are we? We are now. Nathaniel turned her in his arms, his gray eyes soft with love and contentment. I love you, Mrs. Cross. I love you too, Mr. Cross. The kiss was tender and sweet, full of promises for all the tomorrow stretching ahead of them. When they broke apart, Isabella smiled up at the man who'd started as a stranger offering an impossible proposition and become the love of her life. Ready to go home? Nathaniel asked. Isabella looked around her restaurant, her dream made manifest, filled with the lingering warmth of satisfied customers and successful service, then back at her husband's beloved face. I am home, she said simply, and she was. Outside, the city glittered with possibility, but inside Nonna's kitchen, two hearts beat in perfect rhythm, surrounded by the aroma of good food and the warmth of authentic love. Their contract had ended months ago, but their real life together was just beginning. The end.
In the months that followed, Nonna's Kitchen became one of Manhattan's most beloved restaurants, earning rave reviews and a devoted following. Nathaniel's photography career flourished, with exhibitions and galleries across the country showcasing his unique ability to capture the artistry in everyday moments. But more than professional success, they found something far more valuable: a love built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and the courage to choose authenticity over convenience. Their story became legendary in its own small way, proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected proposals. And they lived happily, passionately, authentically ever after, forever and always. Thank you for listening.